All right, everyone. Ian here with Scotch on the Rocks. It's the first day of February, and I have deemed February First Aid February. A couple of months ago, I made a video about tourniquets. It was just a short, and I said I wanted to go over it more. Well, here we are. So, for First Aid February, it's going to be obviously first aid centered. So, the majority of content that I come out with in the month of February will be just that. I'm passionate about first aid. I was an EMT and a firefighter prior to my enlistment in the military. So I have a lot of experience dealing with a wide range of different things, from small cuts and bruises to CPR to actual loss of limbs, motor vehicle accidents, trauma, things of that nature. The other thing is during my enlistment in the military, while I was in Iraq, I was my medic's assistant. So what that means is when there was something that was too big for him to handle by himself, I was there to help. And even if it wasn't too big for him to handle, I was still there to give him a hand. So while I was in the military, the things that we dealt with most were gunshots, explosions, hard trauma, things of that nature. You didn't have too many service members and locals going down with, broken legs. We're talking major trauma, and the sort of stuff. Just really bad stuff. Well, I won't get into it any more than that. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to go over how I have everything set up, why I have everything set up the way that I do, and kind of where everything lives. So what you'll notice is that I have first aid kit here. This is all one first aid kit. I have a first aid kit here. This is all one. This is all one. And then there's this one. So I got a bunch of first aid kits. And these all live in strategic places all throughout my house, in my vehicle. So this one right here, this one lives in my hunting pack. So if I'm out in the woods, if whatever the case may be, this lives in my hunting pack. So inside of it, we have gauze, we have a nasopharyngeal airway, and oh, look at that. I'm glad that I took this apart because it looks like this stuff's already starting to, so it comes with lube. And so basically what this is it's in case somebody can't breathe. There's some form of trauma in the head area. What you do is you would take this and you would stick it down their nose. It's absolutely terrible. It's absolutely uncomfortable. I've had it done to me before in training, but it helps you be able to breathe. There's also an oral airway that you can do, but that's not recommended if you believe that there's head trauma, because it's hard plastic, and what it can do is actually break bones if you've really messed your head up really bad. So it comes with this lube, and you stick it in, and it's super uncomfortable. I'm not going to do it, but everybody should just be aware that's what that is. We have two forms of gauze. So we have compressed gauze, and it is anti-bleed gauze. So this would be impregnated with some form of quick clot. You can never have too much gauze. The majority of bleeding events that you have can be solved with 3 minutes of direct pressure. So, and also holding your head, holding whatever body part it is, if you can, above heart level. So let's say that I cut my finger right here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to get a piece of gauze and we're going to apply direct pressure to it. We're going to hold it tight. It's not supposed to be comfortable. Then we're going to put it over top of our head and over top of our heart so that there's less blood getting to it. The majority of time, even if it looks bad, it can be stopped with 3 minutes of compression and above the heart. Now, if it can't, that's when we start talking about stitches and actually having to go to the emergency room, butterfly bandages, and things like that. So this is a cat tourniquet. Now, so many schools of thought on tourniquets. It's basically user preference. Now, what I would say is that if you're going to buy a tourniquet, it needs to be a quality tourniquet, right? You don't want to buy a piece of want to buy a piece of gear that's of low quality, and when you need to use it, the spindle breaks off. So this is how it comes. It comes packaged just like this. So what you are going to need to do is you're going to need to undo it, and you're going to need to make it big, right? We want it big, because if we need to use it, all we want to do is throw it on, undo this and cinch it down as tight as we can, right? We don't want to be messing with it as far as being in the bag. We want it to be out. Tourniquets aren't sterile anyway, so you just want to make sure that it's not in its manufacturer, basically packaging, right? So if you need to use it, you can get a hold of it. The other thing that I almost missed is that this Scotch on the Rocks is brought to you by Glenfiddich number 12, 12 years. Moving on. So this is the kit that, so I'll put all this stuff down here for right now. This is the kit that lives with my tactical gear, right? So back when I was a police officer, I had a whole bunch of tactical gear in case I ended up getting called out. A series of level 3A plates, and had a chest rig. This is what came with me. So I actually went to a Stop the Bleed class in May of 2019, and that was put on by the federal government, and it was how to stop bleeding, how to prevent, or not how to prevent, but how to work around traumatic injuries, all of that. So this was what came with it. The one thing that I will say that I really, really like is this tourniquet right here. This thing is no joke. You can see that the spindle is made out of metal, and it's hefty, and I really, really like it. And this one pretty well, like I said, it stays in my tactical bag because I know if I'm going to need to use it, I want to use this one first. We have some more Quick Clot, some combat gauze. We have some gloves. We have some duct tape. We have a flashlight. Hey, perfect. I'm glad that we're going through this because the flashlight isn't working. So that's something that we need to figure out, right? I always harp on it and make sure you go through your gear, make sure you test it, and make sure, and I haven't been through this in God only knows how long. So just like I said, it's just one of those things that just rides around, just rides in my tactical gear. Nope, this one is completely dead. So I'm glad that I did that. We'll focus on that here in a little bit. Now, this one you may have seen in another video. I got it out of my battle box. So it had the Rats tourniquet. Now I like Rats tourniquets for portability if nothing else. They're a lot smaller than the other ones. They can fold down and they are super small. And they seem to work. I've used them in training and they seem to work just fine. There's more, it might be a little bit more complicated for some people because you got to remember to keep this hole open so you can slip your body part in, and then you have to wrap it, and then tie it off right here. Whereas with a regular tourniquet, you put it on, you cinch it down until you can't cinch it down anymore, and then you turn that spindle. You absolutely crank that spindle down, and it's uncomfortable, but it works. And then you have to make sure that the spindle doesn't go anywhere, and that's what this piece right here is for. It just holds the spindle straight, locks it in, it's not going anywhere. Now, going over the Rats tourniquet, more gauze, more Quick Clot. More Quick Clot and gauze, pressure bandage. Some gloves. Basic first aid packet showing you how to do it. We have hand wipes because again it's blood and we want to try and keep infection at bay as best we can. I wouldn't necessarily in an emergency situation. Don't worry about it. You got to do what you got to do. But if you have time, it's always good to wipe your hands down so that not only are you keeping them safe, you're keeping yourself safe. But that's definitely what the gloves are for, right? All universal precautions. If you have time, I highly, highly, highly recommend putting gloves on. You don't want somebody else's bodily fluids making contact with your open wounds or whatever it may be. That's how we end up getting bloodborne pathogens, and it's just a really bad thing. So make sure that if we have time and we're thinking, we put gloves on. If you can't, use your beware. I always make sure that I'm putting gloves on every chance I get. If I'm going to be in that situation where I see it happen, I try to put gloves on as quick as I can and then get in there and start doing it. More gauze. We got some more gauze, compression gauze. Some scissors. I like these EMT shears. I've seen people cut pennies with these. I don't recommend it because you don't want to mess up your shears, but they can cut pennies. I've used these for everything as far as cutting up medications, cutting clothes off people in a traumatic event, cutting, there's a world of uses for these. And then we have a Sharpie. Now, the reason that we have a Sharpie is because when you put a tourniquet on somebody, you have to mark the date and the time that it was applied. So that way, when they get to the hospital, the crew knows, okay, this is how long this tourniquet has been on. You want as much information on the person as possible. So make sure that if you're putting a tourniquet on, you let the EMTs or you let the doctors know, hey, look, this tourniquet's been on for X amount of time. Over the years, it's changed. When I first started, they said you had an hour before things started to go septic. And then as time went on, they're saying, no, you have more than an hour, you have a day. Basically, if you're putting a tourniquet on somebody, you want to get them to the hospital as quick as you possibly can. Let's not dawdle. Let's go. Once it's on, get to the hospital. Now this, put all this stuff back in the bag. So, this first aid kit lives in my car, and it actually lives on the driver's side, in the driver's side pocket, basically. So right at your, where the driver's side door is, there's a pocket right there by your left leg. That stays right there for a couple of reasons. One, if I need to get to it, if I'm involved in an accident, tourniquet's right here. It's ready to go. Just throw it in, whatever body part needs to go in, start wrenching it down. If I can self-rescue, I'm going to self-rescue every time. The other reason is I don't have to think about where it is if I see a car crash or something bad happen in front of me. It is right there by my left foot. I can grab it and I can go render aid. Now, the final one that I have is actually something that's super, super cool, and I really, really like this one. Now, there's a story behind this. One of the head people at the local ambulance barn is actually a good friend of mine. He calls me up last year, as a matter of fact. He says, hey, Ian, I want to talk to you. Can you come by my shop? I said, yeah, man, sure. So I come by his shop. And he goes, hey, man, I got you something for Christmas. He goes, I actually handmade this for you. I was like, no, this is awesome. So he hands me this. He goes, any ideas what this is? I said, no, man, I have no idea what this is. So he goes, pull the tab. So you pull the tab up, and it all falls apart. Inside, we have another first aid kit. So, inside here, we have, I'll grab the other piece here. So there's actually a story. Well, I'll go through the first aid kit first, and then I'll tell you the story about this whole thing. And it always takes me like 20 minutes to put it back together. So anything for a little bit of internet clout, right? Okay, we have some gloves. We have we have a breather, right? If you're going to have to do CPR on somebody and do rescue breaths, that's a barrier so that their bodily fluids don't get in your mouth. We have some instant hand sanitizer. Again, we're trying to keep our hands clean as best we can. Another American Red Cross basic first aid book. A trauma pad. Another trauma pad. A burn dressing. Some Band-Aids. And eye pads, or oval, eye protection. Some more sterile gauze. You're going to notice a trend. I love sterile gauze. I think it's the greatest thing because you can do so many different things with it. In cases of emergency, I've seen it used as a tourniquet. It stops bleeding. It's a really, really good thing to have. What do they call it? It's a triangle bandage. This is what we used in basic first aid in the Army to make tourniquets prior to them issuing them. So what you do is you rip this apart, and it's just a triangle, right? It looks like a bed sheet almost. What you do is you it's got to be at least 2 inches long. And what you do is you get a stick and you crank it around and around and around, and it would stop the bleeding. And these are, again, another multi-use sort of thing, and I'm all about that. We have some eye wash. We have some triple antibiotic. We got some tape. Some more hand sanitizer. Some more gauze. Actually, yep, some more gauze. Some more burn and first aid or burn cream, antiseptic towelettes, and just a mishmash of different, first aid burn cream, and then we have more hand sanitizer. So the cool story about this is he worked at a mine for a bunch of years. And this was what they had their rebreathers in. So if there was an emergency at the mine and they couldn't breathe fresh air, there was a fire, there was a collapse, they would pull that tab, and this would be stuck to their belt. So everything would fall away, and all they would have was that rebreather. They'd put the rebreather on, and they, would be able to, in theory, rescue themselves, get out. Well, when the mine closed, they had a whole bunch of these, and the way that they tested them was they would put them on a scale, and if they weighed, I forget what the measurements or what the weights were, but if it weighed less than it should have, they tossed it. They didn't even mess with it. So it was, my understanding is that it was calcium chloride, is what it may have been. Yeah, calcium chloride, whatever it was. It made oxygen. It made clean oxygen for you to breathe. So there was a pile of these things. And he's like, hey, do you mind if I take one of these home? Or take some of these home, because I don't want the rebreather, I just want the tin. So he ended up taking the tin home, and he makes first aid kits out of them for, different people. And it was just a really, really cool gift. Now, the caveat to this gift was that every time I went on a camping trip and I brought it with me, I had to take a picture. So you'll see in my Facebook, if you follow my Facebook account, you'll see different pictures with this, and that's just a nod to him. I've stayed true to his caveat that if I bring it on a camping trip, I take a photo of it. So this is just kind of a quick overview of kind of what I have as far as first aid goes. What I'm going to end up doing is doing a deep dive into tourniquets. From the rat's tourniquet to the cat's tourniquet. I might even rip one of these apart and show you how to make an impromptu tourniquet. But I think that's kind of how we're gonna roll with the month of February, is just all first aid related stuff. So I am going to put all this stuff back, put it back where it belongs, and finish out the rest of my night. I appreciate you guys watching, and I hope you learned something. If there's something else that you want to know, put it down in the comments. I have a lot of research material. I have EMT books. I have doctors' books. Different pills, what different pills do. The nurse's guide to pills. All that sort of thing. But I think that about does it, guys. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.